Much, Greg, for that warm introduction. And I have to say, when I saw the title and particularly the emphasis on moving from values to action, I was thrilled because that's exactly the territory that I'm most interested in. So I am going to share some slides with you, and I'm hoping that you can see the first slide now. It's a bit of promotion, but this is the cover of my book. The book is actually called Urban Playground: How Child-Friendly Planning and Design Can Save Cities, but it could have had the subtitle From Values to Action in Child-Friendly Planning. And it's squarely on this territory that what values do we bring to bear on shaping cities? How what actions need to be taken, and how are the values and the actions linked? And I'll be drawing on not just on my own views and ideas, not just on what others, agencies and individuals have said, but on what cities themselves have actually done on the ground. But I will start with a sort of value proposition, I suppose, a value statement, and it's really a definition of what we mean by child-friendly city or a child-friendly neighbourhood. And I draw on the work of the Finnish spatial planner and environmental psychologist Marketa Kitter and her work on child friendliness, where she talks about there being two dimensions to a child friendly place. So one dimension is, I think, reasonably familiar to us. It's that there are lots of things to do in this city or in this neighborhood. There are plentiful places for play, contact with nature, sports, leisure, meeting friends, and that's the axis along the bottom here. But that's not enough on its own, because children also need to be able to get to this variety of places. And this is the vertical axis of children's mobility. And it's only where you have both high levels of mobility and lots on offer in a city or a neighborhood that you're in this quadrant here, which is the child-friendly city. So it's shifting the emphasis in terms of child friendliness away from formal participation, which was the emphasis in a lot of the UNICEF work over the decades, and onto children's lived experience of the city. So I've had the opportunity to study in some detail the work of about a dozen cities in Europe, Tel Aviv in the Middle East, and also in North and South America. And these are all cities that have put serious effort into making their built fabric more child-friendly. And so I want to share with you, for most of this, my remaining minutes, the lessons and insights from this baker's dozen of cities. So first, I'll start with values, because it is interesting to explore what was the rationale behind the different cities and why they chose to invest time and money in becoming more child-friendly. And the Venn diagram that you can see tries to summarize that. You can see there's a cluster around three broad topics. Indeed, the topic of children's rights and also children's health, well-being is a strong element, and most of the cities grounded their work in that. But there were two other topics: sustainability and sort of community on the one hand, and the economy and actually quite hard-nosed demographic issues on the other. And one of the revealing things about this rationale and this diagram is that most of the cities I looked at actually saw win-wins. They saw wider benefits from engaging in this topic, both around not just children, but also sustainability, also the economy. And I think there's a real lesson for us when we come to make the case for paying more attention to the needs and views and experiences of children. And indeed, I think one of the most powerful ways of thinking or drivers for their city's interests is in actually making a moral case for progressive planning. You're looking here at a quote from one of the leading scholars writing about business ethics and the kind of state of capitalism, and talks about capitalism right now being radically unbalanced, focusing too much on me and now and not enough on us and later. This was actually written before the pandemic, but I think it's even more resonant now. And so for me, one of the most compelling arguments for a children's lens is that it precisely helps decision makers place more of an emphasis on the longer term and on our collective well-being, and not on narrow and short-term interests. So I'm going to give you an example from just one city that really speaks to this conception of values and children's place in a value system, but also how that value is expressed. And that's the city of Tirana, the capital of Albania. Now you can see a list there, and it's a pretty impressive list of the actions that Albania has taken, Tirana has taken in the last 5 or 6 years to make the built fabric of this city more child friendly. And if you don't know Tirana, Albania was probably arguably the most bereft of post-communist countries, lived under particularly severe tyranny, and then emerged into a period of almost unbounded gangster capitalism that laid waste to much of the fabric of the city, both the built fabric, but also the social and cultural fabric. And I think one of the really interesting things about Tirana and the mayor, Erion Veliaj, is that he has symbolically placed children as the kind of moral compass for this city's work to rebuild itself socially, culturally, economically, and environmentally. So I think that's a clear expression of that move that I just talked about around the challenges of late capitalism. So a couple of images to speak to that. So this is a rather lovely square, and it's piloted by a design team that's working alongside the municipality to improve the fabric of the city. And the next image is right now, a couple of months ago. This is a tweet from the deputy mayor sharing her news of how the city is after not just the pandemic, but also a terrible earthquake that hit the city just before Christmas. In fact, a series of earthquakes. But it's still prioritizing transforming the public space, in this case streets, to create pop-up bike lanes. So I think it's a really impressive story of how taking seriously children's experiences and, if you like, symbolically bringing them into the picture helps to build consensus. Now, my book offers really, in terms of a synthesis of what I found from these cities, firstly, a set of 4 building blocks. I don't think these will be a particular surprise, but I would want to emphasize, I think streets are deliberately at the top of this list. I think if we don't get streets to be more livable, more sociable, more child-friendly places, then everything else is really pushing against the tide. I also drew up a set of principles. Again, I'm not going to read through them all. They're there for you to look at later. But I do just want to dwell on one point here, which is it really speaks to questions of sort of measurement and evaluation. I think we need more evidence, stronger arguments in favor of this agenda. I think there's decades of argument and scholarly work, but we need more on actually showing the difference. And so my penultimate slide is, if you like, a model, a recipe, and it's aimed deliberately at the municipality. And much of what I've said is aimed at municipalities because I believe it's the municipality and the level of municipal bureaucracy that has the greatest scope for action. It's a hub and spoke model. And indeed, that's quite a strong metaphor, because the hub at the center of most of the work in most of the cities I visited was one or maybe more official who was driven, who was value-based, and who was effective at getting these other bits of the wheel to work properly. And so my final slide offers you, now this is my own synthesis of a set of strategic indicators that we could use to drive programs and measure change. And they're deliberately put in the format of first-person statements from the point of view of children that try and pull together the different ways in which children can claim their right to the city, not just as individuals, but as part of their communities. Thank you very much.